we get better
All the Belgians have
understood.
Spanish blood in them.
Estas entrevista Journalism Fund, 5 de junio, 11:25 de la mañana. So we start now, and sorry, I need to look for the questions here. Vale. So thank you very much in the first place for the interview. And our first question is, what does the word collaboration mean in journalism today?
Okay, so collaboration in the first place is that you share your knowledge together. This is for me one of the most important issues, that you do a research together, that each of the investigations, so I'm focusing very much on collaboration, cross-border collaboration, so that each of the journalists is digging in his own country about the topic. And then, most important is, of course, that they share the knowledge and make each of them a story that is in the interest of their own public. But what is the advantage of doing this? First of all, of course, you all deal with the same issues, and if you bring together more people, you have more brains, so the results are better. The skills could be different, so that one is maybe better in data analysis or in analyzing data. The other is better in visualization or in mapping or whatever. And so you help each other. And for me, a very important one is, of course, also if you then publish at the same time, your story becomes much more powerful if it's a European story, but most of the stories can be a European, although if they are local. But if you publish at the same time, it's much more powerful, it creates more impact. Is she there?
She's down.
Okay, I will open the door.
Sorry about this.
5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Ya le he dicho que te encontrabas un poquito más.
You want some water or coffee?
¿Quieres agua, café?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Great.
Entonces, ponte si quieres al otro lado y así para grabar todo esto. ¿Sí? So I'm sorry.
Just a second. Organization stuff. And then, of course, you're running again.
Yes.
For an important issue is also it's cheaper because you don't have to travel. You have more knowledge in the sense that you have good information, local information on that national level that otherwise would be much more difficult if you have to travel to that country. You don't know the country, so the local persons, they know better than you do where to look and how to interpret the data. And the most important for us is also security. If you publish in different countries, it's much more difficult for those in power, the politicians or companies or whatever, to attack you. Because if you publish your story in different countries, they say, well, they have to attack in each of the countries the journalists, and that makes it much more difficult. So you empower. By collaboration, you empower the journalists. So this is for us one of the main things. That's why we also try to stimulate it.
What has the Panama paper meant for collaborative journalism? Meaning that there was collaborative journalism before the Panama papers, but...
Yeah, well, not only Panama papers. And maybe that's a bit more funny. But first of all, indeed, ICIJ, the International Center for International ICIJ, International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, set up by Chuck Lewis. I think end of the 90s, or no, in end of the 80s probably, was to join forces, a bit the same what I'm saying. But of course, the big projects like Panama Papers was influential in that sense that journalists saw that by collaboration the impact was much bigger, and the global approach was really strong. Not only Panama Papers, by the way, and it's a bit strange what I'm going to say now, is that also Julian Assange, he forced the media for the first time to collaborate, which was never the case before. So he said, with his data that he brought in, the leaks, he forced, for instance, The Guardian and the New York Times to collaborate, which was never the case before. So I think those big projects helped to understand journalists that collaboration is very effective and very important and very, creates a lot more fuss than if you have to do it on your own. Also, the conferences afterwards, the global conferences that started 20 years ago, I think the first one, the Global Investigative Journalists Conference, and the GIGN is also a player who influenced and helped the collaboration in the good direction. So I'm talking now about 20 years ago. GIGN, the Global Investigative Journalists Network, started thanks to the Scandinavian journalists and IRE, the American investigative reporters and editors. So what happened, maybe I will tell in a nutshell the story. The Danish journalists, they receive money, and the Scandinavians, for training. They have the right to be trained every year, at least for a week or 2 weeks. They get some budget for that. And after a while, they were a bit bored with all the trainings that they got in Denmark. And so they asked to use that money to travel to the IRE. Since the 70s, they started their training and conferences. So they went to the United States to follow those trainings and saw that IRE is a network of journalists. The journalists, IRE, started when a journalist was killed or attacked. A bomb was under his car. I don't know if he survived it or not. And the American journalist said, "Hey, wow, he was attacked because of what he was doing. Maybe we should take his investigation and dig into that and publish it." So all the American journalists, a lot of American journalists, created the network in the 70s after that attack and started to collaborate. That was the first time in the United States. Can you imagine, even in the United States, they were quite late in collaboration. They started because of that attack, and IRE came out of that. So IRE was in fact the big example for the Europeans, the Danish, Niels Mulvat. And those guys went every year to the IRE and said, "Hey guys, maybe we should set up a kind of global network for investigative journalism instead of a local one or an American one, so that not only the Americans have that advantage, but also the Asian, the African, and the Europeans and the South Americans." So Niels Mulvat, and at that time, I forgot the name of that person, but I can look it up, who was the boss of IRE, they decided to set up for the first time a global conference for investigative journalism in Denmark, in Copenhagen. They got some money from that. They had a lot of money in the Scandinavian countries. So they organized for the first time, and who was one of the speakers at that time? Chuck Lewis. So he was to talk about collaboration and how he has set up that collaborative network of International Consortium of Investigative Journalism, which was at that time still a part of Public Integrity, his own organization he has set up a long time ago. So, and then, for the first time, people who were interested in collaboration saw each other long before Panama Papers. You see, so, and that was the interesting thing. So, the second time they organized it again every 2 years. They decided to do that. They organized the second time also a conference in Denmark, in Copenhagen. I was there then also at that time, and out of that we started with a few Dutch. The Belgians and the Dutch, the Nordic Belgians, we speak Dutch, so we speak the same language. We decided to start a small
cross-border collaboration with the VVOJ, the Vereniging van Onderzoeksjournalisten, the Association of Investigative Journalists. That's a Dutch, Belgian, Dutch, Flemish collaboration cross-border set up 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. I was one of the founding fathers of that, you see. And that was inspired by the Danish conference, the second Danish conference in Copenhagen, okay? And then we were a candidate to set up the third global conference organized by the VVOJ. So if you go through the history of GIGN, Global Investigative Journalists Network, who is now organizing those global conferences, the third organization who organized the conference, global conference, was the VVOJ, and was part of that in Amsterdam. We had a discussion, shouldn't we do it in Brussels? For me, a bit a more important city than Amsterdam, but okay, they were a bit more Dutch, so I had to follow them. It was a great, for me, a great experience, and to see also the interaction between the journalists, collaboration. Some stories are always coming out of these conferences. So that's what happened. The network started to become stronger and so on. So we had in 2001 already, my organization, the idea not only because we needed more diversity of money in our organization, we only went, at that time we were only supported by the Flemish government, but already from the beginning we said we started in operational in 1999. We wanted to become a European organization to stimulate cross-border investigative journalism. This was already the spirit of the board at that time. My board is a very special board in the sense we were very young, 33 years old, so all a bit the same age, very ambitious, and some of them wanted to do something in the EU. They're believers of the European Union. So one is now Director General of Climate, so another one is lobbying in the EU for Procter & Gamble, so all sorts of, another one was the spokesman of Engie. So we had all sorts of Flemish guys who were very fond of and believe very much in collaboration already, and of course the spirit of the EU in Brussels, you can feel it already, based in Brussels, who are we not to support it. So also here in this organization, already in 2001, we tried to convince the European Commission to support us. It was a long way, we talked to the spokesman and so on. The history of this is here in this speech I did because of the 25 years of existence.
Can I
you can have it,
this?
yes.
Oh,
you can have it.
thank you very much.
So it was a long process, and we didn't have any examples. So in Europe of cross-border collaboration, except the American International Consortium of Investigative. So we tried to convince the Commission. That was a very long process. Finally, we succeed, but it was the IJ4EU, who is not an intermediary, but press freedom organizations who collaborating, and happened to they found that money, and they give grants, so like everybody, but it's different for me to be an intermediary organization set up to give grants than another organization like an association of journalists or a press freedom organization. For me, that's a different thing. From time to time, I will lose my focus. So the question was?
The question was, what has the Panama Papers meant?
Well, the Panama Papers, one of those key elements that influenced, of course, and showed it was a showcase. That's what we needed, a showcase of good practice, good collaboration with the success. So, well, you can discuss what the success is, but many journalists asked me, can I be part of ICIJ? Because I knew that I know Chuck Lewis. In 2002, I invited Chuck to come to Brussels to discuss how did you do that. We were very interested in the way he did it, set up his network, what is the selection criteria, and so on. So we were already in contact with Chuck Lewis, one of my best friends already for 20 years. We were very interested in that. And so Panama Papers was really one of the, and then all the other
Trees leaks and all the rest.
WikiLeaks also, which was a totally different thing. But also WikiLeaks was a very important thing. I know also Julian Assange, we saw them, and in the German. That may be also interesting to know is that thanks to that global investigative journalism conferences, a lot of journalists said, wow, we should have also a kind of association of investigative journalists. So you saw in Scandinavian countries Grave, Scoop, the Danish investigation organization for investigative journalists. You saw in Germany Netzwerk Recherche, even you have it in Spain, not so recently, but I think one of the ladies who is also in the Isle of Wijnberg, I can look it up, but l'Association of the investigative journalists in Spain, it exists.
De periodistas de investigación.
Yeah. So what most of those organizations are doing is bringing journalists together to train them in very specific investigative skills. And that's what is so important. You learn the importance of freedom of information. You learn the importance of archives, how to use the archives. You learn to use the internet, how to scrape data, how to get data, how to use Excel. So all these elements, which most of the journalists, and there is no scientific research about that, but this Scandinavian approach, using FOI, using scraping, using data sets, these kind of things, this is a very Anglo-Saxon thing. Also the way you attack those in power is a very Anglo-Saxon thing. You saw that in Scandinavian countries, you see that in the UK, of course, and the United States, and you can see that in Germany for historical reasons. For many years, the German media after the Second World War were in the hands of the Americans. Because of that, you had that Anglo-Saxon, but there's no research about that, Anglo-Saxon approach, which is not the case from Belgium to the south and to the east, you see. We must also admit, from a historical point of view, and you are better, you know that better than I do, that in Portugal, only in the beginning of the 70s, you could say that democracy started in Spain with Franco. I knew when I was already alive when Franco died, and we waited for weeks until he died. The colonies in Greece. So in the 70s, even we had dictatorships in the south of Europe, and in the east you had that communistic regime until 1989. So we must also have that in the back of our mind, that this was also impossible until the 70s. To do anything, and until the 90s with the East, and we had also the war in former Yugoslavia. So we had all those historical issues.
Yes,
we had to wait until the 90s and until the internet was coming. Cheap mobile, cheap telephone, internet connection, Skype, these kind of things, sharing information thanks to internet. Also, the internet was suddenly a huge instrument. Scraping, using all those Excel. The Americans started with the computer-assisted reporting. CAR was called. Then to convince the journalists that a computer is not only writing text, but also to use it.
I think CAR was by the 80s or so.
Yes. In the very early of internet.
Sí.
How to search, how to know who is behind a website, and these kind of things. So this was were the typical trainings that were given at IRE and then in the global conferences, and then locally, Netzwerk Recherche, all those Scandinavian organizations in the VVJ. Every year, VVJ also is organizing a cross-border conference, once in the Netherlands, the year after in Belgium. And the second thing that they do is promoting investigative journalism by giving an award. So most of those organizations have awards for investigative journalism. And the third thing that most of them do is publishing or gathering good practices and the methods we have for VVJ. They published, and you have it in many countries. By the way, this is maybe something, it's project.
Oh.
It's an old project, but it's also a bit of an interesting thing. The VVJ, they are publishing, and I think you have it in many countries, books like these. Yearbooks. These are in Dutch, so you have nothing. You can't do anything with it. But they publish every. Yeah, you can have it. These are the yearbooks of investigative journalism of the VVJ. You see, every year they brought out the good practices and the methods. It's in Dutch, and you have it in Scandinavian. You can have one as an example.
Yes. Thank you. Perfect.
As an example. And every year they came up with best practices. It's teaching books, in fact.
Oh.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes.
The making of for me is very very good. I see that you have to talk to my colleagues already.
Yes, we are trying to reach out as much as we can for September, but we will go on with the interviews along the year.
Yeah.
Because by the end of the project, with all the interviews, we will try to do a more strong paper.
Yeah.
Because we really want to understand. We want to understand where do we come from and where are we going to.
The Vivio J, they made an English report, a journalistic report in 2000 and I think 2 or 3. The status of the investigative journalism in Europe, but it was not an academic research. But maybe it's interesting. It was Dick van Eyck. And maybe I have it in digital form. Actually, I don't know. Dick van Eyck. I fell asleep at the computer. And it's the Vivio J who did it. Dick van Eyck.
Because you know that in Spain we had about like 10 years of very impressive and front page investigative reporting in the 90s. But then after that, and until recently with data journalism, that again, media, El Confidencial,
Yeah.
but we don't have the same tradition that is in other European countries. But I don't know why.
But
maybe it's because our past democracy
the
was
past,
late.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
That's
but also
important.
The
But
methods.
I don't know what
this is the book, Investigative Journalism in Europe, 2005.
Invest.
Yeah, and maybe you can download it from his.
No, listen. In.
Yeah, it's. I have the publication somewhere. Yeah, if you can find it somewhere, I'm sure that it's. If you contact him, he has it.
Okay.
He still has it.
I will try to
Digital.
contact
You can always
Okay.
contact him with my
Yes.
regards. You can.
Okay.
It's
Thank you so much.
It's his website, dickvaneyck.nl, so you will find
Okay,
it.
yes, I will find
Yeah.
it. Yes, I'm going to
Oh, he
press
said
that.
the book maybe still the Vivio J has it still in their office. Maybe they still have some.
Okay.
You can always contact them.
Okay, I will.
Yeah?
Yes, and thank you so much because. But the problem is everything is so interesting that you could dig on it and then you wouldn't find the end of it because
True.
it's lots of history.
But talking about the reason why I think it's also a cultural element. We have the Roman approach. I'm always saying, even maybe sometimes romantic. There are theories that should be that for your next research. Theories. One of the theories is, of course, that while we are on the continent and we have the Second World War, especially we suffered a lot from that, and because of that, maybe we are more in the south, starting from Belgium, more constructive. So what a British journalist is saying when he's investigating a politician, they are liars anyway, and they hit them very hard. Maybe in the continent they are a bit more reluctant because they know what can happen if you attack your leaders in a democracy. That's one of the things.
Cultural, historical reasons.
C'est ça. That's one of the things. And another one is, of course, that journalists are here seen more as people who likes to write. It's more a romantic approach. Commenting and reporting is much more important than hard-hitting investigative journalism.
Yes.
So a lot of journalists, they write, the language is much more important. If I see the French...
The narrative. Literature.
Yeah, literature. Most of them studied literature, languages, history, but not a scientist or somebody with something completely different in the back. And so those guys like Dick and so on, they are not. So a lot of them are IT people, for instance. So that was the new thing in the media. So I think there must be a reason. But I see that, and we have a tradition in commenting. In Belgium, in France, comments.
It's same in Spain.
Yeah,
It's
cheaper.
Yes, it's very cheap.
It's cheaper, and you can make it in one day.
Today
you interview Mr.
Yes.
X, and tomorrow Mrs. A, and then you have a story the third day. Yeah? So
Yes.
they are, but that's the easiest.
and
way.
it's cheaper.
Yeah. Nobody is using archives.
And this is what they promote, the investigative journalism. And that is also what we learn from all those cross-border investigations. Use data, the Americans also inspired the journalists in harder interviews. How to write an article that is much more solid, that can't be attacked by lawyers and these kind of things.
Because the use of, I'm sorry, but the use of sources, I am very much impressed on how American journalists use sources. It's incredible. The number of sources, how they cite, how precise they are.
Investigative journalism is bringing in science, how the scientists are using it. For every quote that you write, source. You don't have to put it under your article, but at least you should have it. So if every sentence that you are writing in an investigation, you should know who said it. Is it exactly what has been said? If you talk about the brown door, you should double check.
Bulletproof.
Yes. So this is the inspiration of the Americans, the Global Investigative Journalism Network, and the conferences. And so journalists started to organize themselves, which is not that natural. Journalists were in the past lone wolves, individuals with big egos, and they didn't like to collaborate. This is the same with researchers. Now all the academic world knows how important it is, and all the academic research is now done by many people. It's teamwork, and that was a bit the problem with the journalists. Of course, they work in areas that are focusing very much on the national level, on regional level. You are paid by your newspaper, which is focused on your own region, or the city, even on a very low level, or on national level or regional level. We don't have a national. In Belgium we don't have Belgian media. We don't have them. They are all regional. They are covering Flanders, Dutch speaking, or they're covering Brussels, or they're covering the French speaking part. But we don't have the overall view of the Belgian politics. We don't have it. So they are focusing. They don't collaborate. The French speaking, they don't collaborate, which is very strange because, well, we speak all languages. One of the elements for cross-border collaboration is also the introduction of the lingua franca English. Makes it much more easy now these days. Even Spanish people speak English now. Italians, which was, you remember?
Not too well. Even today, we are not really good. Nobody could. Nobody could speak English fluently. No. It's different
when
now.
I was a child, I've been to the north of Spain as a child, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, almost 45 years ago, and nobody could understand this, and the other way around, so it was impossible. So now we got the younger
better.
Yeah. The same with Eastern Europe. They spoke Russian, the older elderly people, but the youngsters, they speak all English now. So English makes it also much easier to collaborate. You have all those elements that makes it also much easier to collaborate. So everything is falling all at the same time in this direction. And of course, the European Union is a very powerful institution, but it became powerful very silently. Nobody could see it. It happened behind the curtains. But the power went from the national member states to the European member states. The same happened with the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization. Everything became more, the decisions were made on international level, the G7, the G20, and more politicians started to collaborate and made decisions on international level. So who were controlling them? How to be a kind of counterpower for those international organizations? So after that, the criminals and the politicians and all the rest and the businessmen collaborated cross-border and became multinationals or international organizations. At that time also the journalists started to collaborate. They saw collaboration as very much important here. So this is a bit of what's happening, that on that international level we had a lack of European, for instance. We still have a lack of European publication. Now we have Politico, But more and more you see that journalists starting to collaborate and publish stories that are European. They publish at the same time, also with a lot of grants that we have. PFAS was a beautiful example lately that was published all over the place. That was the answer on your question.
I have this just to be sure that I have got it. The influence, like 5 big influences on European collaborative journalism, which is the global investigative conferences,
Yes.
and that's the start, the political context,
Yes,
1718,
political context.
technology, internet,
Absolutely.
then language, English, and the UE context, and yes, it's very clear.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, because I am learning a lot. It's like a master class.
The history of the global conference
Yes.
and the global network is interesting, because the influence of that it's really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And that network becomes in the field already for 25 years. It became, after all those years, a huge family. So also what we have done since 2010, something like that, bringing in all those new organizations all over Europe every year. That was you should have been here. If I would know that.
We have a colleague in Brazil that did here his PhD on collaborative journalism. It's called Benur Demenek. He's one of the few people that has done research on that.
Yeah.
And he told us, aren't you going, because I told him, Ben, we are here in the data harvest.
Yeah.
And he said, aren't you going to? And I said,
why
we can this year, but next year we will.
knocked on my door,
Yes.
So it's just a network of associations of investigative journalists who are coming together. And it's not that we are very happy, because that's also my main speech. Can we be happy? We are 25 years that we are existing, but the situation in many countries is very horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But they are from all over Europe, so that's an interesting network, sharing ideas. We also asked Media Defense. New organizations like Media Defense Initiative came out of Open Society Foundations, who are now, everybody is attacking them, but that in 20 years ago they were so important. The philanthropic organizations were also so important to invest in these kind of organizations, like in ours in 2009, but also in Media Defense, that British organization who is helping journalists to defend themselves on legal levels. They are globally, but it's an initiative of the
It's a very
Foundation.
important topic, the cyber security for
Cyber
journalists.
security,
I went to there is an internet circumvention festival, like kind of hiker activist in Valencia. It's been there for 2 years, and people, activists, especially from South America, come and they talk about how they protect their research.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so we could be doing research for many years on, because
there are
yes.
so many topics. That
Yes,
are
but
not
in truth, I haven't seen neither much research on security issues for journalists.
They have some media defense, but there's no research.
No, it's professional knowledge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, but I will.
But it's interesting to talk to them. The boss is Brazilian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the answer to your question.
No,
Anyway.
to that and many others that I didn't ask, but I'm so thanks a lot for being so generous. Now, is collaborative journalism a trend, or just a trend, or a structural change?
And the first, the structural change or...
Or a trend, or
A trend.
structural change? I mean,
hope it's
I mean,
structural.
is the sector going towards a more collaborative attitude work, or is just because of Panama Papers and
No,
then?
it's more than a trend. It's more than a trend. You see the advantages. You can be your stories can be so much better. The journalists, once they have experienced it, a lot of journalists don't want to do anything else anymore. So even with local journalists, one of the ideas that they introduced was also that local journalists should do cross-border collaboration, which is much more difficult because the local journalists, they don't do investigative journalism, they are close to the power, and cross-border is a huge step for them. It's a very difficult thing. So we try to stimulate also the local media, local journalists, what is the also another element that is for me an important one, especially if you look at local journalists, is that if you compare and collaborate with somebody outside your city but outside your country, you step out of the political discussion. You make it much more functional. Right? So otherwise, for instance, if I always take we have two cities here, Antwerp and Flanders and Ghent. Both are run in a different way by different political situations. One is the Flemish nationalists, and in Ghent it's the liberals with the Greens. And if you compare the two cities, you end up in a political discussion. If you do that with, if you take your for instance Brussels and you compare it with Amsterdam, approximately the same amount of people, a little bit more than 1 million. Having the same problems, housing, migration, pollution, cars, and this housing, language, tourism. If you compare how this city is dealing with all those issues and Amsterdam, then you look at it in another way. You don't think in more in political ways, but you look in functionality. What are the ideas? It's inspiring. You not only criticize your own mayor, but you also bring in good examples from that other city. So then we are in the collaborative journalism can bring in also some of the constructive ideas that you would not come up with if you only attack your own government. You compare with other cities and say, hey, look how the Spanish are doing it in Barcelona. And be inspired how Copenhagen is dealing with bicycles. And these kind of things, how in Austria they deal with public transportation. And you step out of ideology and you say, it's possible, it's a comparable city, they have a bit the same budget. How is it that it's impossible? So the collaboration between journalists can also inspire, and you come into the constructive journalism, or solution journalism, sorry. Solution journalism makes also inspires the public and makes the public also stay with you and read your articles because they are tired of all those negative news. Yeah? Was that an answer to your question?
Yes, very much. And I was going to ask, the last one is about local journalism, so you answered that. And in truth, I hadn't seen that possibilities of solution journalism in local journalism, because yes, we have this problem how they are doing it.
No.
And you don't see stories like that.
No.
We
try, but it's difficult.
No. But I haven't seen that at least in my region, ever.
No.
European collaborative journalism. How is the level in Europe compared to other continents, if possible? You have.
Comparison is always a difficult thing. I'm always saying, if you compare with the past, that's easy. You win always. And it shows that you don't have any ambition if you compare with the past. I'm also teasing the local journalists here and saying, well, we are better than 10 years ago. So that's a bad... if you compare, you should compare with regions where they do better. And so that's an important thing. First of all, I think the quality of investigative journalism is much better now than in the past. Because journalists learn from each other. So that's one of the advantages of cross-border collaboration. You share skills and knowledge. This is why you have now better journalists than before. The second thing is, 20 years ago there was no such thing as budget for investigative cross-border collaboration. Now you have all sorts of organizations who are giving money to do investigative journalism. So this is new. There was never so much money in the field, although it's very small, but there was never so much money for that now than before. So if you have money, it's all a matter of budget. In the Netherlands, for investigative journalism, on national level, they now put in 7 million euros per year. That's the budget of what the European Commission has. So for the whole EU, but more than 5 years ago, there was nothing. You see, so we make progress. The Council of Europe said that journalism should be seen as a public good, and they made a kind of treaty there. They signed all the members of the European Council, even at that time Russia when they were a member, They signed that treaty and said we should do more for investigative journalism and see journalism as a public good. And they made an effort and said in that treaty we should make an effort for investigative journalism. I don't know if the word cross-border was in it, and local journalism. So all the member states of the EU, they engage themselves to put money in it, but they just say it. They don't put their money where their mouth is. So, but it's an interesting. Also, the USO is saying it. One element is now interesting. In I don't know. You see now that journalists, more than before, they pull them out of the media outlets, and I think they are also a bit inspired by documentary makers. The documentary makers were the first who had to look for money somewhere else because it's much more expensive. So what they did is they knocked on doors of charity organizations and alternative sponsoring, alternative ways of financing and funding their projects. So they became production houses outside media outlets. So outside the public broadcaster, for instance, the public broadcaster said we don't pay the whole thing anymore. So we give you 10% or 50% of the budget. We have to find your money somewhere else. This is what happened the last 20 years with production houses. And I see now more and more also production houses of investigative journalism. Production houses of cross-border investigations, like Investigate Europe is a very nice example, of freelancers who collaborated in the beginning and published their story in all the different countries, but with funding from philanthropic organizations. This was also new. The first philanthropic organizations were Frit Oort in Europe. You had it already in the United States. We are very much also influenced by the Fund for Investigative Journalism in Washington. And they are, of course, funded by the philanthropic organization in the United States. This is a cultural element. They don't want to be financed by the governments. So they don't want to get money from them. They take money from all those big foundations. That also, we are inspired by them also, of course. And now I lost my...
Yes, it was the level of European journalism.
Well, thanks to that, the funding and the collaboration, the quality went up. Yeah, and you can maybe one of the things that you can measure there is that the European Press Prize and the quality of the European Press Prize, also the quality of the local media and the awards. I was for a long time a jury member of the Loop, that cross-border investigative journalism award in the Netherlands and Belgium. The last years, the quality went up, so also in the methods and so on. It's really amazing. For me, it's really fantastic to see what the quality of those cross-border investigative journalism is. You should ask also the jury members of the European Press Prize, which is now already there for 5-6 years, and promoting European journalism. And it's also funded by philanthropic organizations.
Now, three, just like keywords, like three aspects of positive aspects of collaborative journalism compared to traditional, and two. You need to go for three. Yes, no. Just on positive aspects, negative aspects of collaboration in journalism.
Well, positive is, of course, that impact is bigger. You empower the journalists because of that cross-border element. Empower the journalists, for me, a very important one. They become strong. The journalists, I'm not talking about the media. I always make a distinction between media and journalists. So I'm talking about cross-border collaboration between journalists. If you are a journalist in a media outlet, paid by the company or a freelancer, for me it's the same. But it's the journalists that we support also, and they are taking the initiative to collaborate and to do that kind of investigations. So that's
one is impact.
Impact. The second thing is, of course, making the stories are stronger and better. So
better stories. Quality.
It makes the quality better. And security. For me, these three elements are very important. So the journalists are much more safer, protected, and feels also much more protected when you publish at the same time in a different media outlets, they say, "Oh, whoa," and especially if you also think of your strategy in communication strategy, you have to also show it that this is an international project. You have to talk about it. So that's also important that you say, "Hey, this is part of an international publication. It's also published in El País, in Le Monde, and in De Groene Amsterdammer and Die Zeit." If you say that in your story, that makes it very powerful.
Well, because I say powerful.
Yeah.
And negative aspects, if there are.
Well, negative aspects. I have to dig into that. Well, I don't see any negative at the moment.
No, you don't have to if there are. No, it's perfect.
Collaboration is. I only see. It's complicated. Sometimes it's complicated.
Now say.
Complication of an investigation. But anyway, it's not a negative thing.
No.
You know how it is, collaborating with colleagues in other countries?
We could say like working in teams could be negative or
working
no.
in teams
But
sometimes.
Negative?
What you see from time to time is cultural elements could create some conflicts. So that's also, and if you don't have the skills, it can happen also that you come up with nothing. That's also a problem. But that's
but it's not negative.
The
only thing slightly negative would be cultural conflicts.
Yeah.
What you say? So yes. And then this first part, the last. What kind of journalists or media are best prepared to do collaborative journalism?
Well, we see the average age of the people who are applying is 39. So you already are a bit in the business. You have already some experience. So that's for me one element, and you have some specific skills in investigative journalism. So this is, or at least you should set up a team with some experience. The best team is a mixture of senior and younger people. Of course, the youngsters, they have nothing to lose. So that's if it's a very young team, we also support them. But we then suggest the mentoring. So we have also a mentoring program to help young teams without any experience, to help them with their investigation.
So it could be experienced journalists with the skills, but also age diversity in teams.
Yeah, age diversity I think is an important thing.
Okay. And then is there gender balance in collaborative journalism?
I can tell you that first the balance is 50-50. So we see, I can show you all the figures, but it's also, we see that we have as many applicants and also the ones who get the money, the grantees are 50-50. I always prefer women because they are much more curious, more strict, but that's something that I think, but it's not scientifically proven. But we see teams of mixed teams, gender, well, we don't see any that women apply less than men, that women do less investigating than men. I don't think so.
Yes, that's what everybody we have in our interview said, that there are lots of women doing, and you have the idea that is not happening. But it is what is. Yes,
I can show it.
Just to know. No.
Yeah, I can show it.
No. Everybody has told us that, and I'm so happy to see that.
It's very balanced.
Yes, but
it's 49-51 or something. It's very balanced. It's
very interesting.
The figures that we have of the people who are applying, we have it from 80 countries. We for last year applications, and the balance is 50-50. So wow. And also without looking at it. The jury, they are very much in favor of the good stories and the credible applications with the good hypotheses and so on. If they believe in it, we give them money, and apparently after a year we see it's a 50-50 balance without doing some efforts.
Good news.
Good news.
Now, about promoting collaborative journalism, what brought you to promote collaborative journalism, you or your organization?
Yeah.
What was that thing that made you? I'm going to.
The power. The fact that we had on two levels. local level and on a European level, not enough quality journalism. That was for me. It's for democratic reasons. So good to know that we are an organization that we are not an organization for media. We are not there for the journalists. We are an organization set up by citizens, and we are there to help the citizen to be better informed, whatever they do with the information that they get from the project that we have supported. But to start democracy, you need powerful journalism. But the problem is that the power went up on European level and on local level. And what we see is there is not enough investigative journalism on European level and not enough on local level. So that's what we said. We need to do something for both sides.
So just one question. What brought you to be involved in collaborative projects, funding, and was the need to seem to of more investigative journalism, not collaborative but investigative that brought you to the collaborative?
Yes, investigative. Yeah, the first thing was European investigative journalism, but European investigative, automatically you end up in cross-border collaboration. If you have to do it on yourself and compare different countries, that's very difficult. So from investigative, automatically it went to daily reporting. You don't feel forced if you say that today it happened in the city of X, there was an explosion. It doesn't stimulate you to collaborate. But if you want to do investigative stuff, it stimulates you to collaborate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's a step from investigative to collaborative. Yeah. That's why we also want to stimulate local media, local journalists to collaborate cross-border, to stimulate, to do investigative journalism, to stimulate them to collaborate.
So stimulating investigative journalism has moved forward collaborative journalism.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, our organization started as a local initiative for Dutch-speaking journalists and to do investigative journalism. The next step was collaborative. Yeah, that was automatically. That's why I got involved in the VVOJ, the Dutch Flemish, because we can learn from the Dutch. They do a better investigation. They have that Anglo-Saxon approach for the Flemish. They said we should set up something. We learn from each other. From investigating, you need some skills that you don't have, and then you have to collaborate with others who has those skills. You have in the Netherlands some very good guys who can do OSINT or dig into Google, advanced search on the internet, using archive.org, how to deal with Facebook and social media. Mm-hmm. Can we do something with it, scraping, these kind of things? What can you do with
like
those
you
data?
outsource the
and
knowledge specialized
yeah, and at a certain point,
techniques.
When the moment that we started to think of a European grant program, we said we should bring them together, the journalists, and especially also the people who are specialized in the field of technology, specialized in the field of FOI. So that's why we set up that meetings in Brussels in the beginning, bringing in FOI specialists, people who dig into the data of the European Commission, especially at that time farming, bringing in those specialists of CAR at that time, and bringing them in together with the journalists and trying to find a common language. So a lot of journalists are not familiar with data sets, and we try to convince them and say you don't need to know everything about all those technology and databases and R or whatever. What you need is somebody who can help you with it. Yeah? So we brought in those IT specialists who are much in favor of journalists, but they can't make any story out of those databases. So if you bring them together, that was the spirit in 2009, 2010, with our conferences that we started first in Brussels, then moved to Mechelen, because we have also the training there. We have a post-academic training in Mechelen for 20 years. And that's how we started to discuss it also with the University College of Mechelen. That's how Data Harvest ended up also in Mechelen. It's a nice city also for networking. Networking was a very important thing. For us, that's one of our missions too. Bring together people to collaborate on networking. That's why we exist also, bringing people together.
So what are the opportunities and what is easy to do when you are promoting collaborative journalism, and what are the barriers?
There are a lot of barriers. First of all,
Language, and Europe has a disadvantage if you compare with America. But thanks to new technology, AI translation, we can move forward. So I'm much more optimistic about that. But language is a big barrier for many journalists. That's the first thing, especially on local level. They are not used to speak other languages, and that's already one thing. Second thing is, the journalists don't find any colleagues in other countries. Who can I trust? It's also a matter of trust there. So how can I find a colleague that I can trust, has the right knowledge? How to set up your network? And so you have now Hostwriter in Germany who helps journalists with that. You have our database with many of journalists who already received a grant and published their story. You can search in it. So that's why we have the whole database, more than 1,000 journalists there. But also awards are online. I always suggest to people to look at the awards, who won an award. Maybe you should look at that. So you can also ask us to help. We have a database of 10,000 journalists in our database. All those people who applied in the past.
The databases.
Yeah, we have big databases. So we help journalists with that. So journalist organizations like ours help the journalists to bring them together.
So, for example, the database would be an opportunity. Having the database help you to...
Databases are opportunities, yes. But money, that's also still a problem, of course. To do investigative, cross-border investigative is also a barrier, right? That's also a problem. Another problem is also, you need also a local angle in the story. So only bad news sells. So if you do a collaboration with 10 and your country is doing good, you don't have a story. So you need a bad story. So that's also a question that many journalists have. What's in it for me? Well, that maybe for the next time then, I said. So, so you see the problem sometimes.
Yes, you need to have something to dig.
Yeah. and a local angle. I don't believe in a translation of one article and that is everywhere the same story. You need to make it, you have to translate it, but in a broad sense of the idea, to a local story. You bring in names of Spain. How did this affect the community? So you need to translate it to your own community. Otherwise, it's a very international story that nobody will read. You see? That's also a very difficult one. So you have the data on European level that is shared by everyone. You have those databases you can share. So that's what people do, the journalists. They put everything in the cloud and you can see what it is in a European situation. And then you have to write your own story.
Probably the thing of Panama Papers was that it had lots of local angles for many journalists, which is difficult.
Yeah.
That was like.
Yeah,
and of course WikiLeaks for the 5 that were collaborating by them. Yeah. But then in the Panama Papers, I'm sorry, but I had just visualized it, that it had many, for all the 300 journalists, there was something on the papers because of the quantity of data.
That's not always the case, if you have databases. What I'm very much in favor of, that's also the definition of the VVOJ, is that you do your own research. So for me, it's a stronger investigation if you don't take a leak, but if you start your own quality or quantitative research. I think this is a much more harder stuff, and I believe more in this kind of investigation than a leak that comes somewhere from.
Well, theoretically, there is a difference between leaks and investigative research.
So that's for me.
Yes.
Investigative journalism is that the initiative is taken by the journalists.
By the journalists. Yes. What is the achievement you are most proud of, as a promoter of? Good question.
Wow, the story that we are still here after 25 years, the stories that came out of it. So we have fantastic investigative stories with huge impact. So that some things changed. That we brought journalists together. That something like Data Harvest exists. That something like a network of European journalists exists. That networks, thanks to our support, still are there. For instance, Investigate Europe or IC.network, they are still there. These kind of things. We don't talk a lot about ourselves, so we always talk about the project that we're supporting. For us, that's the
I know,
communication strategy.
but this is to have a view of what you, that not just you, but all of you that are doing this.
One thing that for me was
after all that effort, what is what you think is important?
For instance, what we also help, we are not the only ones, we help promoting investigative journalism. Most of the editors in TV are saying every journalist should be an investigative journalist, and then you kill the concept of investigative journalism. Investigative journalists, they are not a better or a worse journalist. Right? So for me, it's important that the concept of what an investigative journalist is, that we promoted that. And that's somebody who is using different kinds of methods and has more time. Not always is that the case, but starting from a different kind of data set, for instance, or using different tools, using the archive, having a different approach in the interviews. Is mapping or is gathering information that nobody else has. It's bringing news that nobody else has. So that promoting that is for us an important.
It's like helping investigative journalism
yes. But also to the public, that the public knows that there's also something like this exists, and that they should ask for it. That also the journalist is there in favor of the public. And so independent, the word independent for me is important. So this is what we also promoting.
Like public awareness?
Public awareness. And normally if a journalist is an independent journalist, he's at the side of the public. He doesn't work for any other, not for his media outlet. A journalist is truly independent if he is working for the public and not for his own media outlet, although he is paid by them.
Yes, but public service, I'm sorry, but this is, I went to what is the name, resource, staff resource meeting organization in the field of journalism. It was organized by One IFRA, in Spain in 2008. And the guy from one of the biggest groups in Spain was saying, well, when I told the journalists, well, we need to adjust the budget, you're earning quite a lot for the times now. And they say, well, I'm doing public interest work. I'm not working for you.
That's it.
And he said, and I despair of them because they are always telling you, I'm working for the public, but very important, it is true.
It's very important. And this is also something that we have to promote amongst the journalists sometimes, because sometimes they say, well, I'm working for my media outlet. I said, well, finally, you work in the interest of it.
What other projects or institutions would you highlight besides yours? We are not going to quote mostly on anything, but especially not about this. They're saying he said or she said that this is another one. So we want to know what are the references for the whole of you in the field.
Well, I'm very much in favor of those organizations, the intermediaries, who are playing an important role. And one is already there more than 10 years before us, as the Dutch Fund for Investigative Journalism. Fonds, FONDSBEP.nl. Fonds. It's a Dutch foundation set up by authors to support non-fiction books in the beginning, but finally also became an investigative journalism fund, and they inspired us. Another one is set up 3 years ago, and it's a fund in France. I can tell you all the names. It's a fund. It came out of the Mediapart, the independent investigative platform. And then another one is a Swiss foundation, Journa Fond. It's in the 3 languages, Italian, German, and French. And these are the 4 intermediaries that are existing. And for me, these are.
That would be national intermediaries.
They are national intermediaries. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an important new thing. You have also other organizations who are playing a big role. Other thing is the global network and the association of investigative journalists, like Netzwerk Recherche in Germany. Those networks are also quite important. So these are the first I was thinking of.
Yes, we are almost finished. Right. What kind of activities do you think that need more promotion from institutions that promote collaborative journalism, if any? From any organization that is trying to push forward collaborative journalism, helping, funding, or whatever. What kind of these activities do you think is most important? to support or more needed? Training, grants, workshop is training, conferences, technology, mentoring, networks. What?
Well, I think, of course, I'm speaking now, I'm now biased for grants, of course. This is very important that people, not only grants for individual research, cross-border collaboration, but then you probably have heard that also, that core funding is important for media outlets. So it's also necessary that you support all those small media outlets in the media desert. That's what we did with one of our grant programs. So also from a local point of view, that is needed, supporting the media outlets so that they become more sustainable, although the problem will be and stay for the rest of the, I think that this is a big issue, that cross-border investigative journalism can almost never become sustainable. You always need money that comes from elsewhere, philanthropic or governmental money. Then you have that's
because it's very expensive,
also
right?
The OESO in Dutch, the OSC, the OESO. Let me see how it's in Dutch. A lot of governments, they say, and especially in Europe, the OECD also they said that you can't rely only on commercial media to have investigative to stimulate investigative journalism and quality journalism. You have to, because they agreed on the fact that it's it's in the public interest. We should look for other alternative ways of financing it. So an intermediary is there an important element. Mm-hmm. The children coming from school. So this is what I think is also important, that we have to think of alternative ways of financing these kind of platforms, not only in project funding but also in core funding. Of course, training, but bringing people together, indeed, that's important. Bringing people together, training, that's obvious. But sometimes it's always funny to see that the Commission, they say, we should give grants, but also training is necessary, as if the journalists are idiots. So if they give money to the pharmaceutical industry, they think that that's not connected to training. So if you see in other jobs that they don't ask for training connected to money, and for journalists there's always a training element. For me, it's like that professional journalists don't know how to set up a... So for me, training is not an essential element. Bringing them together is good so that they can have networks, but that's for me an important one. Conferences in Perugia now lost money, now they are supported by Google. I don't know if it's a good idea to be supported by Facebook and Google. Don't have money for that.
So it could be grants and networking.
Yeah, and of course security, SLAP, harassment, physical attacks, social thesis for me, the main thing in the future. Because, to say it in a very, maybe provocative way, the populists, those authoritarian people, are much more aware of the importance and the danger of independent investigative journalism than the so-called Democrats. In some countries, the populists, they start to attack the traditional media to make their credibility, to put them in a bad daylight, so that the people don't believe them anymore. That's the first step. The second step is they take away the money from the public broadcasters. And then the next step is that they buy the commercial media and put them in the hands of their friends. You see that happening while we are talking now. Poland and Hungary are the examples, but now it's happening also in the Czech Republic. And in many recently became democratic countries, we see it that it's very fragile. If you look at Croatia, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, Romania, I don't mention Turkey, but in many countries it's a big problem. So this is for me also an important issue, that the Democrats should know that media are vulnerable, that we have to fight for them every day, and it will not be saved by the markets, because there is no transparency who is behind it. If you see, the media concentration is for me a big issue. Nobody is talking about it, but media concentration is the most dangerous thing that happens for the moment. In Belgium we have 3 big media companies, 2 own also the Dutch media.
Is the decrease of plurality?
Yeah, the decrease of plurality. This is a main issue. Government should invest in small media outlets set up by independent journalists, make the soil more. How do you say that? That new initiative can pop up. That's what government should do. Making it easy, putting seed funding in new media outlets so that they can grow, that you have diversity and all sorts of diversity. I mean, that for instance, small communities in your country that don't have anything. If you see now the Turkish have voted, what happens is in the Belgian Turkish community, who are living here already since the 50s, they're only watching the Turkish media outlets, and they vote for 70% for Orban. They are bad informed. So we should help in stimulating the communities to set up their own media outlets, so that the communities have also their own independent media outlets, and it could be also be impactful in Turkey, even like Correctiv is doing in Germany they have a Turkish media outlet. So this is
Community journalism.
The community journalism on the local community level. That democracy should be innovated from the bottom. I don't believe in top-down investment. I believe in bottom-up investment. Innovation in democracy can be done in a parallel way with innovation in local media. I truly believe that we should put a lot of energy there. If you want to, I don't know if you have seen our movie. Maybe we should end with our movie. It's about the people. I show you our movie. It's about it.
No, I don't think I've seen it. No.
This is a small thing about
No, I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that?
No.
Oh, sorry, just a second.
That is in the website.
Investigative reporting.
2 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
Are you worried about democracy? So are we. That's why we support investigative reporting. Why? Because that serves the public interest. Just a few examples. Thanks to investigative journalists, now we know that the French oil company Perenco SA is facing the Paris Court of Justice because of what they did in Congo. That a leading fishing company is now under spotlight by the European Environmental Agency, and another one by the Irish government after exploiting migrant workers. That residues of a dangerous insecticide have been found in fruit baskets and samples of human urine. That in Europe, there are 22,000 contamination sites due to current or past industrial activity. That 70,000 to 90,000 annual asbestos-related deaths occur in Europe. That riverbed and alluvial mining supported by European companies should be banned in Zimbabwe. That significantly higher migrants are actually dying on their way to Europe than previously known. That young boys are being trafficked to Europe by fake football agents promising them trials with top football clubs. But it is not that easy. Investigative journalism is in danger due to instability, precarity, stress, isolation, censorship, harassment. Only in 2022, around the world, 544 journalists were imprisoned and 58 journalists were killed. Investigative journalism needs safety, support, funds, networking, training. Independent journalism connects people with democracy. Journalism is about the people. So, are you worried about democracy? So are we. That's why since 1999, we have supported more than 1,500 investigative projects, connecting donors with thousands of journalists around the world. Subscribe to our newsletter on journalismfund.eu.
Fantastic.
That's it,
Very
that's
good,
right.
very good, very good. Besides the facts you show, I congratulate you because the craft is very good.
Yeah.
Yes, visuals, fantastic.
Yeah, it's a French guy who made it.
Yeah, it was just,
Very good.
It's really, really good.
But I'm very positive because this sounds very negative, and at the same time, it's if we take the initiative and if everybody is more aware of the importance of journalism, and if governments are putting much more money in it, and philanthropic organizations, but also investors that are saying, hey, we should invest as true believers in democracy, we invest in new media outlets all over the place, then we can make a difference. So that's a bit of what didn't happen in Hungary. They sold everything. Some media outlets were in the hands of German companies. They sold it because they were threatened by Orban. The German companies said, we will not advertise anymore, and so on. We should also try to convince the investors to put more money in independent media. So we need to kind of what was lacking in the past, that media don't promote themselves as part of the democracy besides all other players in the field, the justice, politicians, scientists, so these kind of players in the field. The media don't promote themselves enough. So I see that more than ever before, we have money for it, we have all the technology, we have the skills. From never before we could talk to each other so easily and travel so easily. You can publish digital, it's very cheap to publish all your stories in a very easy way. You have social media to push your stories, so we should put much more energy. And I think this is the era of investigative cross-border journalism, but of course it's also the era of, at the same time, of fake news. So that's the problem, that with all this technology, you can also do the opposite. And what's happening is those who are at the other side, I mean the populists who don't very much believe in democracy, they use those technology in the wrong way, and the so-called Democrats, they say, we don't do anything, they are independent and it's the market who will do it. So this is what we have to do, convince the Democrats to put energy in it. So this is a bit what we're trying to do, but it's a long way.
It's because there is a wave of attacks. It's a wave of attacks and delegitimation of journalism.
Yeah.
But everywhere in
Okay.
Spain too,
All over
attacks
the whole
on journalists from
world.
either side,
Yeah.
not just one political stance.
no.
It's generalized. Yes.
And I think one of the things is that some media outlets, some media companies, they don't promote the journalism as such as an important element.
No, they do that because of we had the campaign by New York Times, Truth is Worth It, and also the Washington Democracy
Yes,
Test.
they do that.
But they do that, but in Spain, not. We have the Association of Editors, but
I believe that with the Trust Project, it's an American concept, I don't know if you know it, Sally, I forgot now, Lehman. The Trust Project is a good initiative so that also you become much more transparent in the way you publish yourself, who has written the story, who is behind your media outlet. So it's an interesting thing.
yes, I think
Yeah,
I've
you
read
know,
about
yeah.
it. Yes, not right for this research, but
Yeah.
connected to the
Yeah.
other one I do. Yes,
So
yes.
I see also new initiatives popping up, and this is one of the good initiatives, I think. So how to build trust as a media outlet? What can you do about it? You have more investigative journalism builds trust. So that a lot of people come up. We should do a sort of technology. I don't believe in technology. Better quality of news, cross-border stories, investigative local media. I think it can make the journalist much more truthful. That's also what the Nobel Prize winner is saying. The 2 years ago, the Nobel Prize winner.
Yes, I know from Russia.
Manila, from Manila. Maria Ressa.
Yes, Maria Ressa.
Yeah, and focusing on global, we did a training in Manila for a week. We had our intercontinental grant program about modern slavery, and we went to Manila. They're fantastic.
fantastic organization. We organize a training together with them for Asian journalists in modern slavery and these kind of things. So we are everywhere.
No, I can see that. I'm doing lots of things.
That's fun,
Yes, two more questions. Yes, one is what about journalism schools? Do you think that the collaborative journalists should be in the programs to train students? And what do the students need to learn about collaborative journalism?
Yeah, I think it should be. So that's an essential thing. The problem is now we have that training. I have a training, international journalism, investigative journalism, that is there already a post-academic training together with the University College and the Catholic University. It's in the Association of the Catholic University Louvain. But we don't see any, I thought, leading by example, but I don't see a lot of progress there. The journalism schools are very, here in Europe, here in Belgium, and I think in the south, are very much focusing on how to write a story. It's also essential, but not about investigative technology, techniques, and cross-border. It should be part of that, yes, indeed. That's not that everybody should become a cross-border investigative journalist, but the notion, having the notion, what is it? At least talk about it in those trainings. It's so essential.
And what is important, for example, for the students to know about collaborative journalism? If you have to set a training program, what aspect would you think it is essential?
Yeah, hands-on tips, for instance, how to set up an investigation on a cross-border level. How to do that? How to
practical.
Part. I think how to secure yourself. From a digital and a legal point of view, where to find money, where to find your colleagues, these kind of things, they're very practical things. So you have a manual about that. Also, Mark Lee Hunter is a guy who set up. It's online in many languages. UNESCO has translated in 6 or 8 languages: in Chinese, or Arabic, Spanish, French, and German. I forgot the title of it, but I can look it up for you. Mark Lee Hunter. Something. So the manuals should be user-friendly, and of course, maybe also already giving them the taste of a cross-border collaboration. That would be nice. Huh? That's, for instance, Erasmus for me is an important. Erasmus is an important thing, but we should set up something from the Erasmus point of view that makes it easier to collaborate and so on.
And finally, these two final questions is because we are doing small research on Ibero-American newsrooms, local newsrooms. We are asking some questions to the journalists, and so we have your view about this. What do you think about collaboration, meaning writing stories with artificial intelligence, collaborating with AI?
Well, for me, that's still not clear. Artificial intelligence at the moment, I used it myself to check some. I said, well, I'm writing now, I will write for a call for the Commission. I want to know. I asked artificial intelligence what kind of publications are there concerning European cross-border investigative journalism, and they gave me all sorts of results, but the research doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So for the moment, we can't rely on it. That's for the moment. Hopefully in the future, that's a bit like the translation of the languages. In the beginning, you couldn't rely on it because it was so bad, but I think in the future, and one guy who is very much into artificial intelligence, he said to me that it will be interesting once the artificial intelligence will set up some artificial intelligence things. For instance, that the artificial intelligence software will say how artificial intelligence software will develop.
Meta. And what
but
about
translation is already good. That's also
no translation is fine, but the other things happens what you said that you cannot rely on the results.
Who is checking them? Also, I invited for our 25th birthday anniversary. Carol Cadwallader, I don't know if you know her. She was the Guardian investigative journalist who digged into Cambridge Analytica. She revealed that, and now she has a fine of £1 million to pay the the lawyer of her component, the guy who is attacking her. She revealed how all those algorithms are working under the surface, and that's what makes me worried. So we need also transparency and legislation concerning that. How does things working and what kind of algorithms are behind it? So at the moment, it's still using the information that is online. So that's my question is, it's too early, but we haven't seen it. What is possible? I'm very optimistic. Technology can help us very much forward, and I think within 5 years we will live in a totally different world in terms of also ways of communication and so on. But
not now.
We still have to be critical towards that. That's also. I see sometimes people very enthusiastic about new technology, for instance, the 3D and so on. I was never impressed by it. It's already 10 years that I'm talking about 3D journalism and so on. How do you say they call it? And all those new toys for boys. I still have to wait for a lot of these new things if it's really so effective. For me, in the first place, it's still to write a story that people want to read or want to watch. So storytelling is still very important. Storytelling, how to make a story. Research, what are your sources? Who are your sources?
Look, it's traditional.
Very classical
yes,
things,
yes.
Invest in that in the first place. This is, if you want to, what helps in the world of disinformation. What to use.
And finally, what about collaboration with the audience? Participatory journalism. What do you think about that?
In a way, yes, but we saw some good. Sometimes it's interesting, especially when it's asking the audience to send pictures if they were attending a disaster. I see this is very effective. That's one thing. I saw also very good practices for the Guardian, for instance. They did a very good thing. For instance, if you have plenty of data, you can ask the audience to help it. It makes your connection closer with your public. It helps the audience. But of course, I truly believe in the independence and the knowledge and the methods of the journalist. So a journalist has to deal with ethics, of course. And for me, a professional journalist is a journalist who follows the ethics. And okay, to a certain extent, you can use the public. I'm not against it. But finally, the journalist is responsible for the story and has to check if everything is okay or not. But it can be using it as a source, helping you. The Ferret has such a. I think it's the Noteworthy is a very good one. They ask for topics. Noteworthy is a very beautiful example. Give us ideas. Submit ideas. That's wonderful. And if you go to Noteworthy, Noteworthy. What is your idea? What do you want us to investigate? You start your debate with them, and you want to if they say okay, and the proposals of the public are online. This is a very nice way. I think it's readers driven. What you investigate, they put money in it. You see all these topics, and also you can sometimes raise money.
Yeah, and it is you don't have the agenda is not directed by
agenda set by on the other hand, if you communicate too open, you make the sleeping dogs awake. It doesn't work out every time. Investigative journalism is also very risky. I mean, we are here. That's what we are saying. In the organization itself and also to the journalist, you are in a risky business, so risk management is an important one. First of all, if you have an idea and you will attack a company, you will not shout it, we will not communicate about it, and you suddenly shouldn't do the same because you awake the sleeping dogs. It's a matter of security, so that you are not attacked before you publish. Also, you have to deal with security of your sources. If you have vulnerable sources who want to testify, and then what happened with them? So all these elements are, you enter a very, well, I wouldn't say dangerous, but still sometimes people die because of that, because of the publication. Journalists get in prison or are sued. So you enter not in the perfect world, but the opposite.
Yes, that would be. Sorry, because you made me see something now, which is one thing is participatory journalism, another is collaborative journalism, and another is participatory journalism within collaborative investigative journalism, which is another issue,
Okay.
but very interesting.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you see participatory journalism, journalists who really go into the community for a long time, feel with their eyes how it is to live in this. It's an interesting way. Very important.
Yes, there was a German journalist that he didn't infiltrate. That is infiltration, right?
Infiltration.
And he, well, sometimes,
Yeah,
but
sometimes
he did infiltrate,
undercover.
built. Gunther, I kind of, it was, I know in Spanish, Cabeza de Turco, but he did many like that in the 70s or so. Yes, no, I couldn't remember that. And I remember his words, but I wasn't thinking about that. Yes. Not exactly infiltration, but just being, so it could be, but also...
That's very good.
Yes.
I like very much this method, but not every story should be like this. We also support this kind of thing, but it's also a dangerous thing.
Very, very dangerous, and ethically it also has its.
But sometimes, ethics. Sometimes journalists also have to cross the legal some laws if it's in the interest.
Yeah, I know.
Of the public.
It's difficult. Yes,
But
you're always in the border of something. Yes. I think that's it, because I had a question about local journalists,
but something to drink.
No, nothing.
No.
And but you answered before, and well, you have given us lots to think about.
Yeah.
Yes, and to work from. Yes, lots.
Well, and if you have another question, you can also
maybe we will. We are now collecting the interviews for the conference in September. But that's like the start of it.
Yeah.
And
you know, before, for instance, that beautiful example of collaborative with the public investigation about the riots in London. I don't know if you remember, in London there were riots, and then I think 10 years ago it was. And then or 7 years ago, they saw who was tweeting.
Was it the Tomlinson case that somebody died, and the Guardian and the BBC did some with Paul Lewis?
Paul Lewis. Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes, because I was much interested in. Yes, I know.
You didn't mention it here, but collaboration with scientists is for me one of the key elements that nobody is talking about. It should be done more. Because you have there, because investigative journalism is bringing in science, and you have there already people with a lot of knowledge, you should use them more often. And as you know, scientists need to publish more and prove that they are also, that what they do is also in the interest of the public. So they also have to...
I think that many techniques that journalists need to do are scientists is what they do. They're scientific. They could put them together, but probably journalists. First of all, there is not good communication between scientific community and journalistic community. But then probably the journalists don't want to share what they are doing with other people, and if you need to trust,
it's a matter of trust.
What you said before, and you need to trust the scientists, because you never know.
And that's why you from time to time need to see each other. The conferences are good, not for the things that are being said there, and don't go so often to all those sessions, because in a session of 1 hour you don't learn enough. Just you give thoughts and ideas, but you have to talk to those people. But the networking is interesting. Who is talking there, and what has he done? And then during the coffee breaks, and in the evening, this is for me much more important. The networking and building trust. You see each other, body language. Who is he or she? Can we collaborate? Can we do the first small investigation together? What are your thoughts about this? So during in the bar you can learn how the other is. Yes,
because this for investigative is very difficult to work together. That is another thing, because what you say. So how do you know that he or she is what she looks.
Yeah, it's
yes,
a bit of
yes.
gut feeling. You don't know for certain, and that's why you need to see each other from time to time in real life. How he is or she is, what he thinks or she thinks.
Yes, because that gives you more
Yeah.
information than
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
looking and
Yeah.
non-verbal everything.
Yeah, the way that the
Yes.
people are
Relations with others.
with others, who they know, and
Well,
mentoring is something that we. So what for me is important is not that they are trained, but bring in knowledge from elsewhere. I'm trained as an artist, and Picasso was saying that why I don't need to know everything. If I need something, I will ask somebody. So I copy it and make it better. That's
yes,
so,
that's not what the network gives
yeah,
you.
you don't need to
Yes.
know everything. You need to have a good network around you. Make your network. And network. One of the things that I did here during our session here with all those organizations is use your network also as an instrument, as an investigative instrument. You make a network of people. If you do an investigation on migration, make a network of people who know about this. Ask them for information, but also give a lot of information. So it's a give and take. And this is what you have to do. Building as a journalist, more than ever before, you have to build a network. This is an important one. Nobody's talking about that. But network for a journalist is key for cross-border investigation. And
Yes.
I'm using it every day. That's why we can open doors. I call somebody doesn't react, and I call somebody else. I know that this person can open door for me, then I ask, can you open the door? And they ask me to do that, the same. No problem.
Okay.
That's a bit...
Very,
So, and,
yeah,
our
thank you
team
so
is
much.
cross-border. We have someone from Poland, from Ukraine, from Croatia, two from Latin America, Argentina and Colombia, one from United States, but is raised in Manila, born and raised in Manila, but went to the United States, he's American. So the team we are only with 10, but it's the world here from Brussels.
Yes, it's an international team.
An international team to feel what's happening. Also, all the languages helps a lot of people. And we have also the translation, but we can offer all sorts of languages. So if you go to grants, we've put in also the translation thing. So if you say, okay, this is not in English, but you can't apply in English, so that's a threshold, but you have to know what it's all about. And I say, okay, I'm using artificial translation, and I go to Spanish. Okay.
This is the
It works
translation
quite
of the,
quickly.
no, but it's really good because I told you that I was reading some of the investigative reporting, some of it funded by you, by the way.
Yeah.
But I used the translation in the page because it was in Serbian or whatever,
Yeah.
and then I said, this is wonderful because
And we use also
yes.
DeepL, but they don't have
Yes.
all the languages. Here we have 25 languages. You can Swahili or one of.
So for impact, that is a very good tool.
Flamenco.
Flamenco is impossible to go through
Yeah.
if you come from any other. I
Yeah,
mean,
but for instance, we have
Yes.
also Hindi.
and you can have it. No, that is
That's
yes,
amazing.
that is amazing.
And I'm asking them if I know somebody, can you check if it's readable? If it's it's amazing.
I could go through the
Yeah.
reports perfectly well.
And
It
it
was
will become
yes.
better and better.
Yes, no,
So
it
that's
was very good.
artificial
Yes,
intelligence.
it is, but the translation
It's
was
machine
very
learning,
good.
yeah? It's
Yes,
machine
I
learning.
know, but it was really very interesting too for international cross-border
Yeah.
reports because you can also,
Yeah.
even if they don't have the local language, but you know, you have.
If you told me, do you believe in artificial intelligence? Well, for
Yes,
this kind
that
of
is
things,
yes,
wow.
very yes,
And
impressive.
Yeah, and I think in the
Impressive.
future you can talk in your own language and it will be immediately translated.
Yes.
This is what
I think they are using already. Does that somebody talks to you and you hear?
it was in
yes,
Perugia.
yes.
I haven't tested, but
Yes.
apparently they built in Perugia in the conference software for in 2 or 3 other languages. If it was in Italian, to translate it to English.
Yes.
So they made already
And-
available to English and with software.
So I think in the
Instant
future we
translation.
won't learn languages anymore.
No.
And that is a pity.
That's the same with
because
reading a
you
map,
don't
right?
communicate with it.
Reading a map and
Yes, I know. No, you never, you don't do it anymore. What is a map in the future? Well, what is this?
So these kind of
Which is the technology is changing, as McLuhan said.
yeah. So what is
so much.
Connecting Continent? That is
Okay.
one of the projects that we have.
Okay, and I've
supported.
seen that there is at least one English chapter, so we can read and use that.
Here,
Yes.
everything is in English. But Connecting Continents is one of the grant programs in the past. So if you go to supported project here,
Okay.
and you see here Connecting Continents.
Okay.
So if you want to go to our grant programs, well, these are the grant programs here. You see that in the Journalism Fund. Connecting Continents, these are the 7 projects that are paid via the Connecting Continents. I see it's in Dutch, sorry. But there's one page.
At least there is one chapter in English because I have
Okay.
checked it,
But here you
and
can
probably
see
there is more.
what
But
we have supported with this grant program.
and yes, and that yes, perfect.
Yeah. So then you see Catching the Real Pirates, Nigeria, Junkyard, South Africa, North Africa, or again. The Amatem deal was a very good one. The Amatem deal, it's only with 6,910 euros, but it changed a lot. It was about credit. The Credit Suisse banker now had to pay the shipbuilder. So they put money. From taxpayers that was meant for the shipping industry. They put it in tanks. So it was how much of the $850 million dollar budget that the privately owned Mozambican company Amatem had to purchase a fishing fleet actually went to military hardware. It went to on international level. For instance, the bank, how do you call them? The global bank. The few worldwide things. It had a huge impact.
No, it's when you come to all the investigative reporting, you get because there are lots of we are going through some of them, and you see so much work at every country, every level, and discovering, the one we were looking at was one of them was about the money people linked to Putin had around the world. It was like a financial investigative, but many. And in Spain, we don't have that strong tradition on investigative reporting.
No, but yeah.
We have good
Come on.
investigative reporting.
The democracy was installed in the 70s. And
Yes.
It was, so
I know, but this is a
2 generations. That thing.
no. But I think it's a question that our media system is not very strong.
No.
We have big companies, but we know, like everybody else, we have lots of problems with the digital transition.
Yes.
And because of subscriptions, quality journalism, they are more investing more in it. But we are not that strong as a system. Because of that. Because of
Go to news. You have here news. You can see. Then I would certainly advise you to go to my article about. Just a second. It's on page 2 now already. Another record year.
Okay.
There I'm talking a bit about my vision and Spain. I don't know, can you send me, I don't have anything of you, or maybe you can send
You can
me.
look at me about me.
Yeah, I asked you now,
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yeah, I asked to connect to this
Ah.
morning. Asked to connect. If you say yes.
And you can see most of me, not every, but I have it quite many things in there.
Yeah. If you allow
No,
me.
sorry, I need to be on
Online.
No, not online, but I see it with that data because I have it with only when I am on Wi-Fi. So I'm going to change it so that I can open it and make it accessible. Now I can. But I don't have here. Now you are
Ah,
connection.
very good.
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't know what you can see exactly when you, because the version you have is not exactly what other people see, I think. But I have it very.
It takes sometimes a few minutes.
No, I have lots of information because I teach my students how to.
Yeah, but maybe you send me an email. I will give
Yes,
you
of
my
course.
card, and then you have all my. It's the old card because we now change our name
Perfect.
into Journalism Fund Europe and not .eu.
Okay.
But then you have my mobile phone and so on.
Okay.
If you can send me an email, I can
I will-
introduce you to
I will write to
Delphine
you.
Reuter. She's one of the our board members. Delphine is.
Is the journalist that is in Spain?
Yeah. She is. If you go to, this is her. This is the board of
Delfina.
directors. Delphine.
Delphine.
Delphine Reuter.
Okay.
She's one of our directors,
Okay.
and she is the data journalist and researcher for the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists.
Well, I will contact her.
Yeah, she's living in Valencia, so you can. She says that she's in Brussels, but it's not true.
Okay.
She's in Valencia.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. How does your name? How I pronounce it?
Ides.
Ides. I will say it.
Euripides. It's a Greek affix, means son of, but
Ides.
it's not so common in Belgium either.
Mm-hmm.
But it's.
I have never seen it. No. Well, of course I.
And brown means the bruine means brown, Bruni, Le Brun, brown. It's my family name. So it's a very common name here, like it probably also is in Spain.
Okay. And I work at the in Valencia at the private university. Concha is working at the Complutense University in Madrid.
Okay.
Yes, and we have members of our project at the Complutense, Valencia.
I love both cities. I've been in Madrid 1 year ago, or 1.5 years ago. Because of course I like architecture and art. So the museum in Madrid, the big one.
Yes, El Prado, no?
Prado.
Yes, yes. Madrid is, you know. Yes,
Yeah, it's fantastic.
yes.
And so the city for me was very surprising. It was during the end of COVID. There was not so many people, so that was fantastic. And it was in April.
That is very, very good. Yes.
The temperature was good. The food was
Amazing.
Same as in Valencia.
Yes. Yes, it is.
The reason why I was in Valencia was invited.
This was the America's Cup. What?
Yeah, my sister-in-law, she made. She's designing light on buildings. And she made a light event during that American Cup in Valencia.
Well,
But the architecture in Valencia is.
yes, but Valencia is a small city. It cannot, well, you don't like comparing, but it cannot compare to Madrid in that respect.
okay.
But it is a very nice city.
Very nice city.
Yes.
And Valencia has a very quality of
And
life.
Yeah.
big quality life.
And the temperature is better than Madrid, of course, in the summer. No?
Along the year, no. In the summer, it is too hot in Valencia. But along the year, we have regular like spring all along the year. So you can enjoy it. Yes, in the summer, summer is too hot. But if you like the sea, it's perfect for the sea, Alicante, whatever. But along the year, it's wonderful. Yes.
Great.
So, Ides, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very patient
I hope,
and generous with the information.
Adding something to what,
Yes.
because I
Lots of ideas.
Yeah.
Yes, besides the answer to the questions, lots of ideas to think about.
Yeah, so for instance, I saw that you talked to IPI. Well, they can't promising anything because they don't have money yet for the moment. So
Yes.
it's not a real intermediary. It's a press freedom organization. It's something different. So they
are
focus on
yes,
journalists.
they are an organization working on journalism.
Yeah.
That part of the action, not the core action. The
Yeah,
part
it's
of
not
the
a
action
mission.
is
I looked into that.
yes. But what we are doing, we are interviewing now institutions that got funded in 2021.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to say, well, who is there?
Yeah, yeah.
You can. So, as you know, this is scientific research. You have to justify why are you talking about. So we have, well, how can we give a criteria to select the institution? So we said starting point. we are going to.
And they don't pay taxes in Austria. They are seen as a diplomatic organization, and they're always teasing them by saying, "How is it possible that you're using tax money and you don't pay? You don't want to pay taxes?"
Yes, that's.
So these kind of things are really.
Yes, I know, because I heard you and I saw. I realized something was going on there.
You know what?
But you are very nice, both
about
of you.
flexibility,
Yes,
they talk about flexibility.
I saw that.
But he don't have any.
But that is
plans.
because they have a kind of a status because of their
Well, not
overall.
because it's a big
Yes,
company.
that's. But you said you cannot compare. So you cannot compare because you are doing other things and you have another organization. But in truth, all of you have been very open, and
Yeah.
I'm very surprised because.
Yeah, but you have to read my.
No, I have
my,
it here.
my
Of course, and of course.
Yes, I did it for many years, so that the 1.5 million went to RJ4EU.
Yes, but
So it's hard labor of me that RJ4EU.
I know, because you talk about that while I was doing the interview. So I know you have. This is all interconnected. The
Yes.
history,
It's a small world.
but in truth, if you see overall, all of you are doing something that I think is very important for journalism. I mean, you can have this with that, but overall, I think that this kind of quality journalism wouldn't be possible without the efforts combined. Whatever happens, the intra history, but overall, I think it is.
Yeah, but the problem is also, and I think the European Commission plays a bad role in it. They truly believe in competition. And if you don't have a lot of money and you throw a bag of money on the table, and you now stimulate others also to run after the money, then you become competitors.
Yes, you
and if
yes.
all those organizations are very much in favor of collaboration, except if they drop a bag of money in the middle,
now you have to
then
compete.
you are competitors.
See.
And then what's happening is then they start not to talk to you anymore, they turn their back to you, they don't want to sit in the front table anymore because they see you as a competitor, like you, Europe.
Yes, but I think that then, it's easy to say that from the outside, of course, because I am I know my craft, not anymore. But I think that you have to, as in interpersonal relationships, where some things force you to or make you have to forget about the framework and go back to basics. I am who I am, you are who you are, and the situation, the context is putting us in a difficult position. It's difficult, but I understand.
No, I'm always. We sent to the conference. We are still supporting them. 20 people. We paid a ticket and a flight. We were there with 8 of my colleagues.
Yes, because in the end you are all in the same boat.
Yes, we
That's
keep
it.
on
Yes.
supporting
Yes.
them. But yeah, they are always a bit. I'm always saying also what I'm thinking. That's not always. For instance, I was invited to the European Center for Press and Media Freedom in Leipzig, ECPMF. We helped them also by setting up this organization, and they said you are welcome to this, and they are the fighters for freedom of speech, but you can't criticize us in our conference. So I said, wow, you are inviting me, but I can't say what I'm thinking.
Yes,
Because he said, yeah, you criticize us then, and the commission is there, and that's for us a problematic. I said, wow, that's a very strange.
well, I have a student that this is exactly like you, and I invite him to my classes, and he starts criticizing my university where he has studied, and in fact he's proud of it. But in his nature, it is to
but
be.
I will not criticize my own organization.
But no. But in his nature, it is to be critic.
Yeah.
So when I invite him, I'm like trembling because it's my students, and but I say, well, when he comes, I know what I expect. But I can understand that. Imagine that there is, for example, my vice rector in my class and says, Elvira, what are you doing? So I can have problems because I want them to know this guy because he's very valuable. He's a good journalist. He's doing podcasts with, but he's yes. But you have to be open and say, well, okay, that's. But you know, it puts you in a difficult position. That is the truth. Is the truth.
We'll try to be polite.
And you can. I think you can say whatever, but you can say that the same in private. So you can go to them and set that in private. And then, I believe in freedom, so, but I...
But now, of
But-
course, they can't, for instance, they don't have to pay taxes since 1952. So yeah, I'm saying to them, well, think about that you take money from taxpayers, but they will not
No,
change
I
it.
understand that.
And
That is...
they will not say, okay, now we're going to pay taxes. They say, this is not a level playing field. If I apply for a grant to the commission, you can do it cheaper
Yes,
than I
but
do.
sometimes you can find a way to say that in a way that is not so...
Attacking.
Yes, exactly. But
I'm not a diplomat.
everybody, yes, probably is that, but it happens. And it is good that each of us is different, because if not, it would be very boring.
But I also say the journalists should stand critics, and they should live with it, because
Journalists are always critic, and you are never comfortable with a journalist.
No.
Even when I invite journalists to my
Yeah,
classes,
yeah.
and they are friends of mine, but I never speak of my university, because the journalist is there with the friend.
But if
And
you-
it should be like that.
Yes, it should be like that, but if you
It should be like that.
attack them, then it's
Yes.
they are
No,
crying.
if not, there is no sense of having journalists around if they do not do their job. So you know that. But I can understand that sometimes
But
in the context.
I'm asking them always them criticize me, investigate me, and
Yes,
investigate my
but
colleagues.
yes,
Do that, but they don't.
yes,
They will not do
but
it because
not for
they're
that,
afraid to
and
get
not
money.
not always. So some people are not that motivated towards. I think that is personal. I know many journalists. Some are, like we call the raza. The raza is, it's ingrained in them.
Yeah.
At everything, not everybody is like that.
Yeah.
So that kind of people can do
Yes.
good research, because it's all the time they are just looking what's going on. I am not like that. I am more soft.
Yeah.
Concha is,
Very good.
she was a journalist and she's more.
I work
Now you know how it is. Yes.
Yes, and
but the journalists in Spain, they are not sufficient information, I think.
Oh, but you think they make progress? I hope so.
Mm.
Do they make progress
Mm,
in the research?
I not think in the university.
Uh-huh.
No, in the newsroom
Yes, they do.
is more chaotic,
More chaotic.
Mhm.
Oh my God.
and it's a risk.
Yeah.
It's a risk. It's a risk.
But there is the data
Not
network.
always, not always want to have this journalism.
Yeah, that's true. But you see now, I see this Civio, for instance, I like them very much. They do in data.
Syria, they were in the data harvest.
Syria, but
Fantastic, huh?
it's not regular.
Hmm?
Syria is good, but
good, huh?
not spectacular.
Not spectacular.
How do you think about ICIG of Washington?
IRPI?
No.
ICIJ.
ICIJ.
In Washington?
In the future, they are now in a reshuffle, they're looking for money, they can't find any money, or not enough money. Some people are leaving the office now. I don't know how it will evolve in the future. There is now a change, apparently. I don't know what's happening behind it. I'm talking to many of the ICIJ members, but they say the journalists themselves, they don't know what's happening inside. But I didn't talk with my board member about it. She's part of that structure, and she's working for them day and every day. She's the data journalist. I still have to, but I don't know if she will talk about it.
No.
So, and George Riley, I like him very much. He's the boss of that network. Very good. But yeah, it's a big organization. It's not easy, yeah? And also fundraising is very.
Sometimes
high.
you die of success.
Yeah. So to focus is so important. That's why we are what we are, because my board is always narrowing it, sharpen. Get rid of the conference. Stop with that. Don't do this anymore.
No, just focusing.
Focus. Become better in what you do and what your mission is. But sometimes, it's nature of people to do this, and then there is a potential there for additional money. Why not? And also, if the commissioners have calls, and it's not 100%, but it's very attractive to try to get the money anyway, because you need the money.